Welcome to Organic News with Cat Waters, revealing the truths behind the conspiracy. Every Tuesday from 6 to 8 Eastern.
Okay, thank you for tuning in this Tuesday, August 11th, 2015. I am Catherine Waters, Cat Waters on Facebook, April Waters on YouTube, and we have Richard Gage of Architects and Engineers for 911Truth back, I think maybe for the second or possibly even the third time. Thank you for joining us, Richard.
Thank you, Kat. It's awesome to be here with you today.
So, it's still only August, but, it doesn't hurt to get, the information out there a little bit early. So it's about a month and a week away is going to be the 14th anniversary of the events of 9/11. And you've been working on questioning the official story since...
Oh my God, 2006.
2006. And what was the one thing that stood out that made you say the official story can't be right? The most obvious thing.
I have to tell you that there are so many obvious things that bothered me, and I'm looking forward to sharing all of them with you today. But I have to say the number one would be that I didn't know, as an architect, 4 years after 9/11, that there were 3 high-rises that were completely destroyed on 9/11. And, of course, we're talking about World Trade Center Building 7, a 47-story skyscraper that was completely destroyed the afternoon of 9/11. And I'm just going, wait a minute, every architect and engineer should be studying this because, they told us it came down by normal office fires. And an office fire has never brought down a skyscraper ever. So we have lots and lots of reasons to have this be the most studied building failure in history. And it should be in all the universities, and it's in none of them.
Yeah, I think it's pretty, it seems quite obvious it came down with controlled demolition.
Well, let's see what you're talking about here. If you're talking about the fact that dozens of witnesses heard explosions prior to this building's 7-second symmetrical freefall collapse, then yes, it's obvious, and that it looks exactly like a controlled demolition. And so what does that mean? That means explosives must have been placed throughout this building's column and beam steel skeleton before 9/11, meaning it was planned in advance. Now, that is the real part of the smoking gun, because you don't just go into a tall building like that that's on fire the day of 9/11, for instance, and decide that you're going to bring it down because it has some structural issues. No, it doesn't work like that. So we know that that building was brought down on purpose, planned in advance. And of course, that casts a huge shadow on the official report of that building from NIST, which says, of course, 8 years later they were juggling this hot potato, and finally came out and said, "Oh, it came down by normal office fires." And they didn't publicize this to all of the architecture and engineering associations and call for feedback and peer review and, what might have we gotten wrong. Most architects and engineers know nothing about the third worst structural failure in modern history.
Right, which had no plane hit that, and what building just completely comes down at free fall speed into its own footprint, just from, local fires.
And these fires were fairly small and fairly scattered and not very hot. You can see the worst fires that we have photographic or video evidence of, and they were concentrated on the 12th and 13th floor, which, interestingly enough, is the floors occupied by the Securities and Exchange Commission, which lost thousands of files that it needed to prosecute companies like Enron, WorldCom, etc. So they're very suspicious fires on the opposite side of the building from where the Twin Towers went down and theoretically started these fires by ejections of their steel contents during the collapse of those two buildings.
When did you notice your probing into the matter was not welcome?
Well, we have evidence that when I've given now 450 presentations around the world in 37 countries and 85 American cities, and most everybody, and often everybody in the room will raise their hand at the end agreeing that this is compelling evidence and we need a new investigation. And so we've brought that evidence to the American Society of Civil Engineers, the American Institute of Architects. We have brought it to government officials, media officials, and it is met at these top levels of these organizations and agencies with and individuals with a cold shoulder, very cold shoulder. Right. And it's fascinating because, hey, we're just asking questions about, the real good questions. A building can't fall at free fall acceleration against 80,000 tons of structural steel without decelerating at all. It continuously accelerates as if a bowling ball falling off the top of the building. It meets no resistance from any of those 80 steel columns. So it's obvious that something's wrong with this picture. Those columns had to have been removed. That can only happen with explosives. So we present this information far and wide, and people get it, and architects and engineers get it. We have 2,500 now signed on to our petition calling for a new investigation, and many of them are speaking out around the country as well about it. But when you get to the level of organizations, there seems to be, in governments and media, they seem to be controlled, and it is very disturbing. And when you realize that the evidence is also very, very clear with respect to the explosive destruction of the Twin Towers, the complete shattering of a 110-story office building from almost the top down to the bottom, dismembering the entire structure, one beam from another column, etc., that they were also destroyed in a series of with a series of thousands of explosives and incendiaries. We have evidence for the incendiaries throughout the World Trade Center dust. It's a very compelling argument. And people, well, first of all, most people don't want to hear this because this is disturbing information. Because we don't want to believe that there could be a group of people who could organize themselves and perform these disasterly deeds with inside information and inside help and get away with it and have it censored by the media, 90% of which is owned by just 6 corporations, I came to find out. And when you look at who owns those corporations, as did Project Censored in one of their studies, a media critic think tank from Sonoma State with Peter Phillips and Mickey Huff, they found that the people that run those 6 corporations are the same people that run the corporations in the arms industry, the oil industry, the banking industry, the insurance industry, all of whom, of course, profited enormously from the events following 9/11. So we've got a much bigger problem on our hands than the free falling of Building 7.
Exactly.
It's just a start.
Right. I mean, and I think it's an insult even just to the average person to believe that fires brought down any of those buildings.
Yeah, fires never brought down a skyscraper. There have been 100 examples of much hotter, larger, and longer-lasting fires in these buildings, and none of them have collapsed. So you have NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who was tasked by Congress to explain these 3 high-rise collapses, who completely ignored all of the evidence for explosive demolition and went straight to their evidence for destruction by fire. In the case of Building 7, normal office fires. In the case of the Twin Towers, office fires that were started by jet fuel and some columns that were impacted by the planes, of course. So essentially, it's 3 skyscrapers destroyed by fire on the same day. Never happened before or since in history, and yet their hypothesis, the most unlikely hypothesis, a destruction by fire, was the one they went with and completely obfuscating the evidence for explosive demolition.
And so you have a new documentary coming out, Firefighters, Architects, Engineers Expose the Myths of 9/11. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, this is an important documentary because never before have we had Eric Lawyer, the founder of Firefighters for 911Truth, appear in a presentation laying out all of the violations by NIST of standard arson investigation for fire and explosion collapse for the NFPA 921 manual, which actually NIST helped to write, interestingly enough. But they completely destroyed the evidence, 98% of it, sending it within weeks after 9/11 to China, they being FEMA and the city of New York, for recycling. So that evidence, which could have been left at the landfill on Staten Island, was completely destroyed. So Eric covers these types of mishandling and obfuscation of evidence and outright criminal fraud in their 3 reports. And he does an excellent job of it. So this is completely slanted toward the firefighter's perspective. This particular film, we'll be screening it in New York at the world premiere on September 11th on Friday night at 7 p.m. Eric Lawyer and I will be on hand to introduce the film and to answer questions following. We will have the DVD available to ship on September 1st. So we're very excited about that. And
what is the venue? The venue's what venue is it going to be?
Oh, this will be at West Park Presbyterian Church, which is in the Upper West Side of New York.
And that's 86th Street, I believe, in Amsterdam?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And the following day, Saturday, September 12th, there'll be a full-day conference that INN World Report and Les Jameson of New York 911Truth is going to be hosting. So I'll be present during those activities, which I understand will include a legal panel and as a panel of psychologists looking at the deeper issues about, A, why we have such trouble ourselves looking at this difficult issue, and B, why we have trouble discussing it with people and how to get them to be open to the material. We don't beat people over the head, for instance. We ask questions. At some point, we need to let some people just go and have their opinions and leave them be.
Exactly. And you also have a 50-page booklet that you have been distributing to, was it architects that are getting this booklet?
Oh, yes. This is very exciting. We are almost done writing this book and reviewing it. 50 pages of evidence about why the official story makes no sense, what the actual evidence shows, why it's proven that all 3 towers came down by explosive controlled demolition, what that means. So for the first time, it is very readable. It's not highly technical. It's designed to appeal not just to architects and engineers, whom we will be mailing 20,000 copies to, and it will be for sale as well. And people, in fact, people can order it now. We're still on the tail end of fundraising for it, but people can order the book, I think 10 copies for as little as I think a couple of bucks each. So it's a great opportunity to have a detailed book for people to take to those people who, aren't swayed for some reason by DVDs or brochures. They want to look at. They have time to read. They're interested at that slightly more academic level. And it's a booklet that people won't throw away because it's a quality booklet. It's not trashy. I mean, it's not. It doesn't have. It has a high quality to it. So people will be reading it. So we encourage everybody to get it, to walk it into your congressman and show them. Let it sit on their coffee table for a while, and media representatives, architects, engineers, scientists, professors. It's a really it fits a gap between our technical peer-reviewed papers, which are on journal-of-9/11studies.com, and our brochure and DVD. So we're very excited about it. It'll be available also in New York at the premiere film screening of the new documentary.
Okay, that sounds really exciting. And so then you're also going to have a computer model of World Trade Center 7 that you're going to be showing in New York.
Oh, we won't be showing it. We're just starting it. We've been negotiating with a major university to perform a computer model of Building 7 to show, A, that the existing computer model by NIST is fraudulent. It doesn't work. And B, to show what could have and did, in all likelihood, bring down the World Trade Center Building 7, which of course is explosives. So that's very exciting. Now that's a very, very expensive finite element analysis that's going to take months for the university to put together. So we're fundraising for that, and that's what we're starting on September 11th, the official fundraising for that study, which should take probably 3-4 months altogether to complete. And this is a very, very sophisticated structural engineering department of a major university in the U.S. I don't think I can name it at this time, but it will prove beyond all shadow of a doubt that NIST's computer modeling was completely corrupt or certainly fatally flawed. For instance, their computer model shows not what really happened. That is to say, it's an animation. So through input data, they show how they think or want us to believe that the elements within the model failed, and thus how it came down. But we've got the videos of how the actual building came down. There's about 11 of them that show that it drops suddenly,
Right.
that it drops symmetrically, that it drops at free fall acceleration, pretty much straight down. So, and that's all in 7 seconds. But their computer model only shows us the first 2 seconds of its failure because it begins to tip over. So they don't want us to see that. They can't even manipulate their data enough to bring this building straight down, which would match the reality that the videos show. So they also show 400 structural steel connections failing every second. And in other words, the inside of this building is completely coming apart like a sand castle that you're spraying water on. It bears no resemblance to reality, unless, of course, that reality is explosives, which is not their conclusion.
They even have news clippings of people announcing that, and showing that World Trade Center 7 in the background is coming down even before they've announced it.
Yeah. A lot of people knew this building was coming down. In fact, and that's incredible. When you can announce the unprecedented collapse of this 47-story skyscraper 20 minutes before it happened, as Jane Stanley did on the BBC at 5:20 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The building doesn't collapse until 5:20. That's really good reporting. You want to be on the spot there, and so that's proof in and of itself that this building was planned for demolition, and that the word had gone out. The news agencies did get the script, and they even announced the cause of this building's collapse, which NIST took 8 years to figure out. And in that case, they said due to structural weakening when the towers went down, Twin Towers, which wasn't even really the cause. The cause changed.
So
And NIST put aside structural weakening as a non-significant factor. They put aside the diesel fuel fires. They put aside other causes and ended up with normal office fires because the failure began on the northeast side, which is the opposite side from the towers, and it is not on the 5th floor where the diesel fuel was. It wasn't burning at all.
And it's also heard, like, people are saying they're going to pull it. They're going to pull the building, prior to Building 7 coming down. So people knew that they were going to, and pull it is a term for controlled demolition.
Well, let's tell the story so we make sure that we are all on the same page with your listeners. Larry Silverstein is who built Building 7 in the late 80s and ended up buying the entire complex of World Trade Center buildings in a 99-year lease that consummated just 6 weeks prior to 9/11. And he put a very little money down, like $125 million of his own money, and then ended up with $5.6 billion at the end of the deal, which is a great deal. But more importantly, I think, he's on a PBS station called America Rebuilds program. And a year after 9/11, he's saying, well, I was talking to the fire commander, and there's been such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And so they gave the order to pull, and we watched the building come down.
So
he's referring to Building 7 because that's what they're talking about and showing. That's pretty incredible. He comes back later and says, oh, I meant pull the firemen out of the building. Well, there were no firemen in the building. And you don't say pull it when you're referring to firemen. So here he was, for some reason, just caught red-handed telling the truth for once. And so a lot of people consider that a confession. And of course, it's not evidence, so we find it fascinating, but we don't use it as part of our evidentiary body.
That sounds pretty incriminating right there. I mean, you know, that's pretty blatant.
I think so.
And incriminating, and right, not to mention that he made all that money because he was. I mean, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, and I'm sure that you're not. You know, it's limited to what you can know about things, but right, Larry Silverstein was losing money on the World Trade Centers. You know, articles have been written about that, which, you know, I'll just like leave for people to kind of, there's articles out there about it.
Well, one significant part of that story is that the city was requiring the owner, at the time the Port Authority, to get the asbestos out of the building, because that was a federal law. And that was depending on the estimates you look at, a $2 to $15 billion project, which of course is unfeasible. So these are white elephants, these buildings. They didn't know, you know, you can't, and I'd actually heard, though I don't have evidence to support it, that they applied to the city to do a controlled demolition of the buildings, and that was denied. But I'm still looking for that documentation.
And so last year was a very happening time when they unveiled the billboard, the 9/11 billboard, on 47th and 7th, I believe it was on the northeast corner. I mean, I'm not sure if those details are completely accurate, but I'm trying to remember. And it lasted, I believe, 15 seconds, because it was a moving billboard, and so every whatever half a minute to a minute it would come up and ask people, are you aware that a third building fell on 9/11? That was pretty exciting, and that's not happening this year because I guess it's pretty costly to put that.
Yeah, that was a $25,000 video that showed Building 7 coming down, and the very relevant text that went with it. Did you know a third tower fell on 9/11? Yeah. It got a lot of attention, but I guess not enough for us to be doing it again. We're trying to find the magical elixir that will wake up the American people to the reality that they were lied to about 9/11, because it's not just the three buildings either, it's everything about 9/11 was a fabrication, and no part of the official story makes sense, other than planes hitting buildings, which did happen, but some researchers suggest those weren't even the same planes that took off with the passengers in them. But we don't know about that. We don't research that part. We're architects and engineers.
Right.
But we got to wake the American people up, because if they knew that we were scammed in a huge way, an unimaginable level of evil we're talking about here, and A, it's unimaginable, B, it seems evil to me, then this means we all have abdicated our roles as citizen watchdogs, and we're supposed to be in control of our government, not the other way around. So something's gone wrong in our society.
And again, like, I know what you study, obviously has to be limited to just the architectural aspect of it. And Jake Ritchie, who's going to come on after you to talk about opening the 28 pages, because it's actually getting some, airtime because on Fox, sorry, I forget the Fox anchor guy's name, Shepard something, was interviewing Judge Napolitano about opening the 28 pages and talking about, Senator Bob Graham is looking into it. And so the way the anchor referred to Bob Graham, he kind of put it in such a way that, because it's a senator that's saying this and not just some like quack conspiracy theorist, he's somebody that should be listened to, which kind of, I feel like is kind of part of the problem in the way that he put that. So, if your average person was asking questions about 9/11 or something, they would just be considered a quack because they don't have a brain, of course,
Good point. And Senator Graham, of course, was the chairman of the original 9/11 Commission hearings that Congress had. He was also, I think, chairman, but certainly on the Senate Intelligence Committee. He's retired now, but he's raising all kinds of questions, and it is very good for the 9/11 Truth movement that these questions are getting into the mainstream media, because they at least put the idea that there are remaining questions into the minds of the public, which is extremely important. The question I'm hoping you'll get at with your following guest here is the pros and cons of this 28 pages. What we've been told by the 17 senators is that they were blown away by what they read, that it's basically proof that Saudis were high-level government officials in the Saudi Arabian government were involved in funding these terrorists. And, of course, that goes halfway for us in the 9/11 Truth movement, because we understand that these 19 terrorists, or whoever they were not involved in setting explosives in the towers or planning vigilant guardian air drills or putting put options probably in the stock market, that this is a much bigger problem than Saudi Arabia could possibly be involved in alone. But that if it is successful in releasing these pages, we imagine and hope that it will start the unraveling of the lies, the ball of yarn of lies of 9/11, and that, of course, that'll end up coming back because elements within the Bush administration, are quite involved, apparently, from what other researchers say, covering up the Saudi involvement and getting them out of the country and on a separate series of planes after everybody else was grounded, leaving the East Coast for Saudi Arabia, et cetera, et cetera. So we think it'll unravel. But the danger is that some believe that, well, since the 9/11 Truth is kind of coming out now, they got to kind of finger somebody for it. And so maybe they'll finger Saudi Arabia before anybody can think. Who knows what they'll do, go and invade them and steal their oil. I don't know.
So there's a question on the Awake Radio chat, and he must be a Brit because his question is, does Richard believe in a bloody revolution is necessary in the United States?
I hope not. I certainly don't want one. I think when you realize that 535 representatives of that many that we've put into Congress, not one of them is speaking the truth about 9/11, other than Cynthia McKinney, who was railroaded out of Congress for doing that and speaking other truths, we therefore need 535 new representatives that will speak the truth, that are not bought and paid for by the powers that gave us 9/11. So something is something needs to happen, and violence is not going to serve anybody's needs except those in power who are fomenting themselves various kinds of conflict in order to seize greater levels of control.
And so since last year, is there any new revelations, anything, or is it going to be in the documentary Firefighters, Architects, Engineers Expose Myths of 9/11, and they'll just have to come to New York and watch the documentary to see?
Well, and this material that Eric and Lawyer and I put together is based on a previous presentation that we gave together that we've been trying to edit for a few years now. So it's not new information. Well, excuse me. It's timeless information, and most of it is new to the 9/11 Truth movement because of Eric's presentation and collection and presentation of it. But it's not revelatory. It's not a game changer. Like for instance, when the Nano-thermite paper came out from the 8 scientists who have proven now, 4 years ago, that nano-thermite was found in the World Trade Center dust, which is a very high-tech form of thermite, an incendiary. Thermite is an incendiary used by the military to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter, and it is a very, very advanced formula at the nanoparticle level.
Is that a nuclear weapon?
No, it's residue of a high-tech thermite, which is just an incendiary. Incendiaries work by heat, but as opposed to explosives, which work by gas pressure, which knock things over. So there's a lot of heat generated by thermite in the 3 towers, and that is proven in numerous ways, which I think is very interesting for your listeners to know as well. Because, and so what we see in the dust is the residue, the unignited residue is in the dust of this thermite, but the ignited residue is also in the dust in the form of billions and billions of tiny, previously molten iron microspheres that are identified by official sources, the USGS, R.J. Leah consulting firm, but are not explained. They're very well documented. And in fact, 6% of the dust is composed of elemental iron microspheres. Well, elemental iron, its source in these spheres means it was heated to its melting temperature, which is 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit, which is twice as hot or 3 times as hot as office fires or jet fuel could ever burn. So that alone is proof of super hot temperatures, and the fact that it's iron, which is the byproduct of thermite, this incendiary we've been talking about. So, and then we have the unignited thermite, which we talked about just earlier. But in addition to all of that, there was molten iron pouring out of the South Tower 10 minutes prior to its collapse, which we assume is molten iron, but it has to be molten iron or steel based on its color. It's not copper, lead, anything like that. So, and it's not aluminum, because aluminum it doesn't glow bright orange, bright yellow in daylight conditions. So that's one, and the first responders, dozens of them, are on record talking about all this molten steel, they called it. But it does turn out to be molten iron, flowing like lava down the channel rails, as they say. There's a lot of documentation of this material, and in fact, the original report by FEMA in their Appendix C does a metallurgical analysis on a couple of pieces of steel that received such treatment, temperatures exceeding 2,800 degrees, looks like Swiss cheese, It's got sulfidation, where there's no source for the sulfur. Sulfur is a byproduct, an additive to thermite. It makes it much more effective at cutting through steel when you add sulfur. And so is the only reasonable explanation of where all the sulfur came from to make this steel, thin and Swiss cheese looking. And so NIST, when they took over the investigation from FEMA, threw this metallurgical analysis out. They didn't even report on it because it's completely unexplainable in the official story, which only discusses jet fuel and fires, which again cannot possibly reach anywhere near those temperatures
and the fact
required to melt steel.
And the fact that the fires burned well after 9/11, weeks after, or even I know it was a significant period of time after.
Oh, it was months.
Right.
The last fire was put out in December. That's just incredible, meaning that they have their own source of heat going. And we speculate on that we're talking about unignited thermite continuing to ignite as it finds pieces of unignited, and or the special conditions created underground where pockets of molten iron, the byproduct of thermite, are allowed kept from oxygen so they don't cool. They can't get any hotter, but they don't cool as fast. So we don't really know why those fires lasted so long. We do know thermite burns underwater because it contains its own source of oxygen. So the lake of water they put down there in those basements was not extinguishing these fires.
So before the events that you're going to be here in New York on 9/11 and 9/12 on 86th Street in Amsterdam at the West Park Presbyterian Church, are you going to be speaking anywhere else where people can get more information?
That's the best place, and the conference the next day I won't be speaking at, but there's a lot of information there at the same place, the same church, all day. I think it's starting at 10 o'clock, put on by A&E911 World Report and Les Jameson. And we will have a press conference on the 11th, at some point, sometime, down at the entrance to the 9/11 Museum, where all day we will also be handing out our brochure, which is the alternative guide to the museum. What you will not see in the 9/11 Museum, the alternative guide. So it was designed to look like the brochure that you get in the museum.
And Barbara Honegger is going to be down at the reflecting pool at the new Freedom Tower reading out the names of the victims. Is that right?
Here's what's is very exciting, because not only 9/11 created a lot more victims than the 3,000 that died that day. We've got a lot of categories of people who have died, and Barbara has assembled all of them, as many of them as she could find, and including the first responders, more of whom died after 9/11 than before, directly related to their exposure to the toxicity that was released on that day, which is a much greater crime, I think. Well, it was another great unprosecuted crime. But the people in Afghanistan and Iraq and other places who have died as a result of the global war on terror.
Exactly.
So she's assembled thousands and thousands of names, and I will be at the reading that will be done by hopefully 100 of us during the morning of 9/11 on Friday, and also on Saturday night, a candlelight vigil, September 12th, which is actually at the reflecting pool but we're going to meet somewhere else and go over. So I think the one on Friday morning is not going to be at the reflecting pool because there'll be official ceremonies going on there. It'll be nearby in Zuccotti Park.
Okay. And where can people find the exact schedule for all the events?
That's a good question. It will be posted information on our website, AE911Truth.org. It will also be posted in much greater detail at 911truthoutreach.org. That's 911truthoutreach.org. And there'll be a few other places. Those are the main ones.
So I want to thank you, Richard Gage of AE911Truth.org. And I'll be looking forward to seeing you on the morning of 9/11.
Definitely. I'll look for you again, Kat. It'll be great to see you again.
You too. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Okay, bye, Richard.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so our next guest, I'm just going to go right to Jake Ritchie, who's going to be talking about releasing the 28 pages. Jake?
Yes.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Welcome to Organic News here on Awake Radio. Let me just make this quick announcement because things got a little turned around in the second hour. Danny Panzella of Does Pot Cure Cancer, who was going to be on at 7, is now going to be on at 7:30. And the interview that I did with Sister Megan Rice that I was going to play at 7:30, I'm going to play it after you, Jake. So I just wanted to let people know.
Okay.
Okay, so how did you get involved with releasing the 28 pages, and what are the 28 pages for those who don't know?
Well, I joined I am the face of truth.com. We call it FOT for short. They're pretty much a grassroots action campaign on Facebook where you put banners up, and those banners, and you spread those banners throughout Facebook, and it puts awareness to 9/11 Truth. These 28 pages was just a subject I sparked interest into, and I wanted to take it a little bit further. And so we decided to make a division of this and just kind of make it my baby. So the 28 pages are basically a section of an 800-page report. This is the official report of the joint inquiry into intelligence community activities before and after the terror attacks of 9/11. There's a little misconception that this was hanging out. These are false pages, and this is not part of what the 9/11 Commission report was. This was done 18 months before that was published. So this was a totally separate thing. This was headed up by former Senator Bob Graham. He was the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he's the driving force behind the movement to release these 28 pages.
And did you happen to catch the Fox News interview with Judge Napolitano? Sherman, I'm sorry, I'm like trying to remember the name of the news guy. I have the link, and it was Les Jamison had sent it to me, and they're talking about the lawsuit that because it's the families that are actually bringing a lawsuit suing the Saudi Arabian government, because that's supposedly what is in these 28 pages, proof that Saudi Arabia's involvement.
Right, and that is exactly what needs to happen in order for them to be able to pursue those lawsuits. Is the 28 pages which have the proof would be needed to be released. It kind of goes a little further than that too, because Bob Graham had alleged, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Israel, all fund extremist groups like ISIS, and therefore If that's going to change our foreign policy, these 28 pages need to be released. It's vital for anything that has to do with the Middle East. But yes, my number one reason would be so that victims' families pursue these lawsuits. There's a couple other things here, too, that are very important about these pages. Transparency. I think we all can agree, anybody who's in activism or in the truth movement, transparency in any way. We're taxpayers, and we paid for this investigation, and we have the right to see what's behind the pages. Most of the senators that were privileged to go in and read these pages in pretty much a room where you can't take notes and you can't talk about anything after you come out, they all agree that these 28 pages do not pose a threat to national security, and therefore there's no reason to keep them classified.
So what is the process of that now? Like where is that now, pending, or as far as, because Rand Paul is actually also getting in on releasing these 28 pages.
Yes, correct. There are two bills right now. The first one is H Resolution 14, so it's House Resolution 14, and this bill urges the president and Congress to release these 28 pages. Again, that's backed by former Senator Bob Graham, also Congressman co-sponsors Stephen Lynch, Walter Jones, and Robert Massey has also talked about the release of these pages. And what Senator Rand Paul did on June 1st of this year was he introduced Senate Bill 1471. That's the Transparency for Families of 9/11 Victims and Survivors. Now, this one would require the president to release these pages. Now, both of these are great to have because they run parallel. They heighten public and media awareness. So both of these bills definitely need to keep going through Congress and the Senate and everything in order for this to go forward. Now, Obama could totally take all of this and squash it just by releasing the pages. All this stuff that we're acting on and spending a lot of time on could go away if he would just release the 28 pages. There is a reason why we think Obama has not released these 28 pages, and that's basically the $80 billion that he gave to Saudi Arabia for an arms deal for the next 10 years. He did promise the victims' families personally that he would release those pages, I assume, until this deal was made. And now he does not want to do that, and he's avoiding it.
And I mean, he also promised to close Guantanamo, too, and he hasn't done that either.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
And so on this, or next month rather, on the anniversary of 9/11, are you going to be involved in any of the presentations or speaking about this?
I really haven't been approached yet about that. It's something I would definitely be interested in. So I don't know. We'll see. That would be something I would love to be interested in. I'm very close to D.C. I live just outside of Washington, D.C., so I can easily access D.C. if I need to. And I'm always there on 9/11 unless I'm wanted somewhere else.
What are they going to be having in D.C. for 9/11?
That I'm not sure. That's all still in the works. Things are mostly taking off in New York, so a lot of that stuff has been pushed up into New York. But now with Rand Paul and his introduction of the bill, I think things are going to heighten up a little bit more here. I'm just thinking it's a little too close to 9/11 with what Rand Paul did. But as soon as anything breaks, I should be the first to know. And,
maybe this will be sort of a catalyst to getting more people to talk about 9/11, because there are a lot of activists and activist organizations who, despite, being anti-war, despite, not being afraid to point out and confront about a lot of other issues, but for some reason 9/11 is just something that they refuse to delve into out of fear of, turning off people too much. And so this could possibly be the one thing that introduces, or makes it easier for even activist groups to start to question the official story.
Yes, and this will bring 9/11 back. It has Fox News, amazingly, and the New York Post and other publications. This is putting 9/11 Truth back into the headlines of mainstream outlets. This is exactly what we need. You know, people like Richard Gage, who's one of my idols that you had on your show, his expertise and everything that he does is scientifically proven. I mean, it is on top. And it's a shame he doesn't have that political power to take it to the next level. And we're thinking that with these 28 pages being released, and we have senators involved and congressmen and lots of backing and a presidential candidate, I think that this will give a huge push to those experts in 9/11, and that includes Richard Gage and Christopher Bowen and Rebecca Roth and people like that. This will give them a push. I think it will help.
I wanted to just refer to this a New York Times article interview with Bob Graham. Oh yeah, it's actually, wow, it's old. It's from 2002. I didn't think it was that old. But anyway, I mean, so like Bob Graham, I'm sure like was not questioning the official story. I don't think opening the 28 pages with Bob Graham was started back in 2002. But I'm just going to read this one question. How has your worldview, how is it different today than it was on September 10th when you think internationally and where we stand in the world? And Bob Graham's response is, September the 11th confirmed what many had been saying before that date, and that is that in the post-Cold War era that terrorism was going to be our major security threat. I have served on a commission established by the Kennedy Center under its executive director, Graham Allison, studying the issues of security threats to the United States, and we have consistently identified after the stockpile of weapons within the former Soviet Union that the next major threat to the United States was international terrorism. So this is kind of like now like a far cry from that response.
Right. Yes. And the amazing thing is that back in 2003, this is not something new. Back in 2003, 46 senators signed a letter to George Bush urging him to release the pages. And amazingly, Hillary Clinton was one of them, and Nancy Pelosi. That just went stale. And when those people are approached about what they had signed, they completely act like it never happened. I'm not really sure what the driving force is behind all that, but it disappeared with a quickness. And Bob Graham decided that he wasn't going to let that happen, so he took another approach, and he wrote a fictional book on the subject called The Keys to the Kingdom. A lot of activists will do that in order to not be prosecuted for giving up information. Whistleblowers would do this a lot too. Rebecca Roth did that with methodical illusion. But basically, he's expressing kind of what he read in those 28 pages in a fictional book. So I would definitely recommend that book. But yes, this is not something new. And as far as security goes, this is necessary to better manage our current national security. And this will change foreign policy a whole 180. Absolutely.
And who do you believe, or if anyone should be indicted?
Well, that list is running off the table here. There is a huge list here, but I think we have to take baby steps. So the first thing that we're going to have to establish to benefit the victims' families is the entire going after Saudi Arabia, which is going to change a lot of the deals we make with them. The second is the most obvious thing, and it's going to point the finger right back to the American government. It's going to implicate everybody from George Bush to Donald Rumsfeld and people that the public never really hears about. There's lots of names. So this is going to have the potential of indicting, if possible, lots of prominent people and companies, security companies, airports, the airline industry. There's going to be a lot of different people that will be affected by this. I remember back in January, I attended the press conference in HR 14 when they released the bill back in January. And I had the opportunity to ask a question, and I asked Stephen Lynch, were there other foreign governments involved in this besides Saudi Arabia? Because, we already know that the United States government and Saudi Arabia are pretty much where the finger's being pointed. And his words were, the report speaks for itself. And he said, it's tough to you can't write any notes when you look at this information. And he said, there will be other people once it's released who will look at this information and catch things I didn't catch. And, and what I think he was trying to say was, yes, he can't talk about it, but there are other Middle Eastern countries, specific sources that are in there, and that could all open up new lawsuits.
Who is Bandar Bush?
Bandar Bush was the ambassador to Saudi Arabia, and he was involved in some very shady dealings when it came to the cells in San Diego and in Florida in regards to what we think is in the 28 pages. There's been a lot of money transactions between them and Muhammad Atta and some of the other hijackers that were in these cells.
Is that his real name, Bush?
No, Bandar Bush is the nickname that's given to him.
Okay.
The incredible relationship with George Bush. There was another ambassador as well. I can't remember his name to Saudi Arabia. And he was picked specifically by Saudi Arabia because he was a friend of Bush, and it would actually bypass anything that people would say, yeah, no, we're not going to do that for Saudi Arabia. Well, this friend would actually push all that through. So basically, it's a conflict of interest. And this gentleman went on national television and said that right in front of everybody.
And in the 28 pages, other than just implicating Saudi Arabia, does it also implicates the U.S. though, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, though, the focus is just on Saudi Arabia to keep people's minds in the game. I think if we were quick to say, hey, George Bush did this, and, so all these other cronies did this, I think it would turn people off. So we want to, I think what Bob Graham is trying to do is keep the focus on Saudi Arabia and just let's get this published, and then we can point fingers after Saudi Arabia.
So I just also wanted to refer to a Huffington Post article. Hold on, I just have to bring it up. That says, this article is from 2012, that says, sadly, those 28 pages represent only a fraction of the evidence of Saudi complicity that our government continues to shield from the public under a flawed classification program, which appears to be part of a systematic effort to protect Saudi Arabia from any real accountability for its actions. For example, after a nearly 8-year delay, the CIA recently responded to Freedom of Information Act requests submitted on behalf of the 9/11 families in 2004 for reports and documents cited in the notes of the 9/11 Commission's final report. Unfortunately, when it came to the documents, such as a 16-page CIA report titled Saudi-Based Financial Support for Terrorist Organizations, our own government redacted every word of substantive texts.
Right. Yes, and like the Fox News report with Napolitano, he had also mentioned in there 80,000 pages were sent to a New York federal judge and also a Florida judge they're still reviewing it right now. We still don't have any action on that. But in those 80,000, that's all part of the 9/11 investigation, and they were all kept secret. And that wonderful FOIA request made the FBI turn over those 80,000 pages. So there's definitely going to be more to come as soon as those judges release what their findings are.
And a question on the Awake Radio chat is asking, what about the dancing Israelis?
Yes. While I don't think the dancing Israelis is in those 28 pages, because that was an eyewitness report during 9/11, that is a factual event that happened. those dancing Israelis actually went on TV in another country and said they were here to document the event, and that's widely publicized. And I really do think that, like Lynch had told me, if another pair of eyes gets in there, you know, if all of our experts in the 9/11 field get their hands on it, and there's a few that come to mind, and they start looking into this, we're going to see the 6 degrees of separation here, and we're going to be finding, you know, for instance, security company connected to Saudi Arabia from Israel. There's going to be these connections that are going to be made, and we definitely don't want to forget about Israel. That seems to be one of the things in the truth community that divides people with this bill. They think it's limited hangout or a red herring because it doesn't specifically address Israel. And there's a lot of people that ride the Israel train that they're 100% complicit in the attack. While that could be absolutely true, I don't think it's 100%, but I absolutely believe they were involved in this. It was part of the Mossad operation. And I think by releasing those pages, we'll get closer to that. But right now, the dancing Israelis is not in there.
Okay, I'm again referring to this Huffington Post article from 2012 entitled Reopen the 9/11 Investigation Now. And down like halfway, here are some of the pieces of the puzzle. Much of what we know has been learned through the energy and competence of external investigators, state and local law enforcement officers, reporters and authors, and plaintiffs' attorneys. Concisely, often over the FBI's objections, the Congressional Joint Inquiry uncovered a good deal about a support network in San Diego, California. There, a man named Omar al-Bayoumi, whom the FBI had identified as a Saudi agent even before 9/11, provided direct assistance to future hijackers Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid Midar. Those two Saudi citizens who came to the United States only 10 days after attending a terrorist summit were the vanguard of the operation on U.S. territory. Bayoumi, a ghost employee, was paid by Saudi company but not expected to report for work. The company's monthly non-salary payments to him increased eightfold after the two hijackers arrived in San Diego. He and his family left the country 7 weeks before 9/11. So if anybody just wants to read that article, it's Huffington Post Politics Reopen the 9/11 investigation now. So, so you're not going to be part of the festivities here in New York on 9/11.
At this current time, it doesn't look like it, but like I said, if something comes up last minute, I'm there. I mean, it just takes a phone call to me, and I'm there.
Well, I'm inviting you.
I appreciate that, definitely. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to get busy then.
So, Jake, Ritchie, is there any websites that people can refer to get more information? Or it's just hr14.org? That's one.
Yes, correct. And you can go to that website, hr14.org, and sign the Roots Action petition to release the pages. We're always looking for volunteers as well. But there's a great thing on there. It's already set up for you where you can send letters to the president, your local senators, and your local congressman to release these pages. It's already drawn for you. It makes it really easy to do. I encourage everyone to make sure that they do that. The second thing is definitely check out our social media page on Facebook. It's called HRES14, HRES 14, and in parentheses it has 28 pages on 9/11. We do post articles. We keep any breaking news, anything up to date. That's the quickest way to get it.
Thank you very much, Jake Ritchie. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.